Ooh. I didn't want to. There we go. Okay. Shall we start?
Yes, we can go
We
ahead.
know people are still signing on. So my name is Lenny Ryan, and I'm co-chair along with Jahan Al-Jaraya of the Capacity Development Committee of Research for Life. And one thing we do is webinars and training. We do both those. So let me give you a little background, just maybe 3 minutes, and then we're going to turn over to these two very knowledgeable presenters. So, as I said, the current co-chairs are myself and Jahan Al-Jaraya, and we work very closely with Information Training and Outreach for Center for Africa. Marsha, Michael, and Monica help us do all the activities that we do each year in a very efficient way. Okay, so let me close the, hold on 1 second. There we go. As you know, there are many hurdles in place for researchers in the Global South, and there's an urgency to increase research participation. And this is, of course, tied toward the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Research for Life's core activities are vital in terms of infrastructure and developing research outcomes, evidence-based policies, and investment priorities. And we, as a partnership between UN agencies and publishers, we fall under the SDG 17 Partnership for the Goals. Okay, but we also, you know, we're dealing with supplying information about poverty, about health, about agriculture, many topics that fit in the other SDGs, okay? So the goals of Research for Life and the CAP development team, the kind of vision is to have less of a one-way program and to make it more reciprocal, to enable diverse and rich scholarly exchange. So our aim for 2013 that came out of the 2022 strategic plan is to significantly increase participation of researchers from the LMICs in the global research community. So we remain committed to supporting local research networks in their capacity development. Okay, some of our activities that we've had this year are a series of webinars, and you can see from the topics that we're really trying to help educate, promote issues that are of value to our constituency. We have already had one webinar, Unknown Unknowns, the Impact of AI on Scholarly Publication, a couple months ago. So this fits in the bigger picture of giving people in the Global South the skills to function in this environment. We've had a series of training. We work very closely with the Country Connector Project of Research for Life. We've had training for the Country Connectors and the ambassadors, a virtual course in Arabic. We had a Join the Scholarly Community virtual course. We did an introductory Research for Life course with the Country Connectors in Uganda. We assisted, and I really like this because this was set up by the Ghana Country Connectors and assistance from FAO and Research for Life. And there was a Center for Plant Medicine Research that we participated in that. So that's getting to be very precise training. And then we just had the Building Future Resilience course, which was about climate change and focused on resources in agriculture, health, and the environment. And we also used the concept of building, climate first responders, that the librarians and the information staff should be first responders and be in a position to supply information on these critical issues. And then finally, we'll have this Women Scientists Research for Life in Writing and Publishing in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in French. And I just have to say, we would not be able to train at all in Arabic or French without the work of my co-chair. So on that, we're just going to briefly tell you today's topic. discover how AI is reshaping research, writing, and knowledge dissemination, and what this means for academic world. So let's explore how AI can explore, not replace, human creativity and scholarship. And finally, our presenters are Dr. Gretchen Chimwaza, founder and executive director of TOCA. I guess I've known for 20 years now, and Dr. Andrew Cox, who comes from their background now as a senior lecturer in the Information School, University of Suffield. The key is that these people have done their homework and have knowledge about AI, and we are desperately in need of this. And I too will be in the learning position in this webinar. And with that, I turn it over to the two of them. Thank you very much. And I stop sharing, and I think they have something to share and the presentation. Okay.
Thank you very much, Lenny. All right, so welcome everyone to this webinar. We would like to start with a small poll to just hear from you what you think about generative AI and how you are interacting with it wherever you are, whether you are working for a research institution or you are working for a university or you are in the library. We would like to hear what your interaction with AI is at the moment and what are your feelings in terms of how you are interacting with it. So I will start with a poll. Please look out for the code. You'll be seeing it in the chat and you can react to that. Chair, are you ready?
Thank you. Yes, I've just put the link to the poll in the chat now. You can just confirm if you can see it, and then I'm going to go ahead and present it on the screen. So let me go ahead and share my screen, just a moment. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen now. The first question that we have there is, what is your overall view of AI? So I can see we have quite a few responses coming through. For those of you who've just joined, I have put the link in the chat and I can share it again. And we're currently just responding to this short poll. All right, I think I'll just give maybe an extra minute or so for everyone to be able to join the poll and respond. All right, I can see your responses coming through. And I think for the sake of time, I'll go over to the next question, but you're still able to join and respond. All right. Right, so the next question is the main benefits of AR, of AIR, and then we've got some options there. You have helps create teaching material, speeds up marking, helps coding research data, help translate research literature, helps proofreading academic articles, and then the last option is there are no benefits. So the question is the main benefits of AI are, and then you can go ahead and respond there. I'll give us all a minute to do so.
Very interesting that many of you are using it for proofreading academic articles. This is great. And also creating teaching materials and for translation. That's interesting. All right, moving on. I think we can go to the next question.
Okay, I think we can go to the last question that we have here. All right, and the last question we have is the main problems of AI are, and then please choose the one that applies. So the first one, students use it to cheat. It gives inaccurate answers, which students believe. Students depend on it rather than thinking for themselves. Researchers depend on it rather than thinking for themselves. Researchers break confidentiality by uploading data. Researchers break copyright by uploading texts. It reduces the use of the library. And then lastly, there are no problems.
Very interesting. You feel that students depend on it rather than thinking for themselves. Interesting. And researchers are depending on it as well, instead of thinking for themselves. It reduces the library use. Interesting. Interesting. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for your responses, all of you. Just, it gives us kind of a deep-stick understanding of your feelings. This is a quick poll, but over to you, Dr. Andrew. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming along today. For convenience, I'm sharing my slides in the chat as well as on the screen. So if you click on the link in the chat or go to this QR code, you can see my slides. So I'm from the UK, in Europe, obviously. And when Gretchen and I were talking about this session, I was reminded of this poll. It's asking people, are you more concerned than excited about AI? Equally concerned or excited, or more excited than concerned? And interestingly, the United States, which is probably the leading country in developing AI, is the one with the most people who've got anxiety, more concern. Whereas countries in the global south, and you can see there Kenya and Nigeria, there's a much bigger group who are more excited than concerned. And that really seemed to be in line with what you said in the poll. You seem to be more optimistic than pessimistic. I come from the UK. I think we are quite pessimistic. So it'd be interesting through this webinar to explore why those differences exist, really, but also to look at how the UK is trying to respond to this issue around generative AI. So my first couple of slides are about learning. So there's many ways in which we have to say that AI is fantastic for learning. Because generative AI, I'm talking about really. I'm talking about ChatGPT, probably mostly. It's going to give you responsive feedback and interactivity. It can personalize content to your way of learning or your level of learning. It can support the process of learning as much as learning itself. So things like managing time. I think students are very excited by, even awestruck by AI's ability to answer questions. and that actually promotes engagement with learning. And we found that there's a lot of advantage in terms of accessibility. For example, students with disabilities find AI really helpful. Also, those who are studying in what is not their first language find things like translation really helpful. Also, to get lectures transcribed is fantastic. And of course, AI can be used by teachers to improve their teaching. So there's lots of benefits. But there's also been a lot of research that indicates there's problems too. So, of course, some students will cheat using AI. They will present work that has been produced by AI as if it was their own work. But perhaps more problematic is, what are the skills that are being lost as we rely more and more on AI as a kind of aid? Things like writing skills. It's great if we're maybe writing in another language. It helps us think of the best phrase, helps us write in a more formal way, more academic way. But what's happening to our actual skills to do that for ourselves? And there is some research about this idea of cognitive offloading. In other words, the more I sort of offload these tasks like structuring my thinking or drafting text, the more I do that, the more I'm thinking less, the less critical thinking I go in for. And there's also been a lot of research on things like, how does using generative AI impact the social side of learning? Instead of going to the teacher and asking them a question, instead of going to another student and asking them a question, they'd rather go to ChatGPT because it gives a more rapid answer. But how does that impact the social side of learning? How does it impact creativity and things like that? So there's a kind of balance there to be made, and I think the conversation about, should we say, AI literacy, about how we should be teaching students to use AI effectively, has to also remember, it's giving them extra skills, but it must be also about the skills we're actually losing or being devalued. Things like summarizing a text, drafting, writing, structuring ideas. We're losing some of our skills. And there is a discourse around AI, which is always saying, oh, this is going to save you time. This is going to make it easier for you. But sometimes those things that are made easier are really important. Maybe they can't be that easy, or they're being constructed as become boring. For example, I've seen a lot of adverts for AI tools that reduce the task of like coding data. But that's a key task. You can't just offload that. And it's not boring, it's the essence of doing research in some way. So what are we losing as well as gaining? Of course, I think Gracian's going to talk more about maybe the contextual factors. Of course, I'm talking from a UK perspective, but these are some of the things that we know probably are universal, I would guess. We can't detect use of AI. We can't really design AI-proof assessments. It's very hard to do that, really. Students are driven by the idea that AI skills will make them more employable. Teachers are much slower to adopt AI than students, so there's like a lag there. And institutions are slower to adapt to the technology than people are. So how does the institution itself keep up with the technology? So I think those are important sort of background factors. Another sort of dimension of this, so I've focused there on learning. If we talk about information, access to information, which is kind of central for those of you who are librarians, information professionals, in many ways, again, generative AI is fantastic in terms of like, well, I can ask a question, I don't have to use keywords, I can just pose my question in natural language, and I have a conversation, and I get an answer. And most of the time, that's probably what I want. I want an answer. The chatbot can also do things like translation and summarization and help me manage my time. So in many ways, it's making access to information better. And that's what libraries, information professionals are all about. So that's got to be good, hasn't it? On the other hand, we know there's lots of problems of information quality. It gets things wrong, it's not up to date, doesn't give citations a lot of the time. You can't repeat the same question again and get the same answer. You'll get a different answer each time. We know there's such biases. We also know there's a massive kind of cultural and linguistic bias towards English, American culture, basically. It's also got these things of, it's got a sycophantic tendency of like, it'll basically agree with you, even when you're wrong. And users don't use AI in a particularly sophisticated way. They don't use all the prompting techniques that we've learned about. They just stick in whatever they want. There's also this issue that generative AI, it may give a quick answer, but it's not drawing on local resources. It's never going to say, oh, I can give you a bit of an answer, but maybe go to the library to find out more in depth. So it's never really knowledgeable about what local resources are available. So overall, again, like with the learning, there's a lot of benefits, but there's some issues as well. In terms of information quality, there's some good things. It's increasing access to knowledge. There's also some problems. We can also say AI has a kind of social ethical dimension. So here's some headlines from the British newspapers all about basically how science will be advanced by AI and health. Often these stories focus on health contexts, such as, detecting illness quicker for using AI. But on the other hand, there's a lot of societal damage by AI. There's issues around the copyright, which I know most librarians are quite concerned about. It's threatening jobs in certain sectors like the creative industries. There's inequalities in access to the best AI. So if we're working in an American university, and many of them are developing really sophisticated tools for their students and staff, we in other countries are often using free versions of what's available for free. That's not as good. So it's increasing inequality in many ways. And there's sort of environmental. There's been a lot of coverage in the sort of UK press, for example, about the environmental damage created by this kind of rush to build data centers. And many of these impacts will probably be worse in the global south than the global north. So again, there's this positive side to the impact on society of AI, but a negative side too. If we think about research, it's much the same. There's a kind of sense of a balance. On the one hand, look at all the ways you can use AI during the research process. You can come up with new ideas. You can review the literature. You can collect data. Maybe you can start to, instead of having like a passive questionnaire survey, the survey can actually talk to the people filling it in. It's kind of more dynamic. It can also do things like transcribe data. It can start to do some analysis. It can help us write up the results. We also know it's probably being used in peer review by publishers. So there's lots of benefits, but again, there's a lot of issues that we in countries like UK are pretty worried about, such as the limits. So we might do a literature review for you, but it's always going to be limited by paywalls, by what knowledge it has access to, which is typically biased towards US open content. There's these copyright issues, like suppose I'm doing a literature review and I wanted to get a summary of something. Should I really be uploading a PDF of a journal article? Is that really even legal? Data analysis, there's the issues again, confidentiality and reproducibility. So if you get it to code some data one day, 5 minutes later, it'll give you a different answer. So how reproducible is this material? So again, there's lots of issues there. One other complication I quickly want to mention is like the publishers don't really have a clear stance on this. So this table from a recent paper sort of looked at how the publishers talking about what should and should not be allowed in terms of AI use. And what this table basically says is they're not very consistent. They're not very clear about what is and what is not allowed. So there's that element of doubt. And certainly there's quite a lot of limitations on researcher use of AI from a publisher perspective. Of course, there's many drivers, and maybe let Gratian talk more about these things that are pushing us to use AI, that we've got to use it because we've got to publish. We've got to publish in these big, prestigious English language journals, even though that may not be the language we want to write in for our local audiences. There's the cost of publication. There's the lack of research infrastructure. Those things mean it's not a level playing field already. And as I said, I think American universities will be getting much more powerful AI tools than we have, the free ones we're relying on. So some of the things, what can we do about it? It feels like AI literacy training is got to be central to this story, an important role for libraries. There needs to go beyond prompt engineering, helping people to write better prompts. We've got to think about the disciplinary differences in need. We've got to teach staff as much as students about how to use AI better. And we've come up with a model of AI literacy, but there are many, many models of this. I just mentioned R1, but I know there's at least 40 models of AI literacy. So AI literacy, promoting that is a really important role for libraries and academic staff. We've also, in IFLA, I'm part of the IFLA Special Interest Group on AI, we've also produced a bit of a report that helps people launch into discussion about how AI should be used. And there's also this need for some sort of institutional policy, procedure, guidelines. And we can see some common patterns. What happens a lot of the time is one institution comes up with a policy and people basically copy it. So I think it's worth looking around at the different institutional policies and procedures there are out there. Just wanted to say, okay, so the University of Sheffield, just an example really, is just produced an AI policy in relation to research. It talks about appropriateness, only use it where it's really appropriate to do, attribute it, so say that you've used it, be clear, open about how you used it, make sure it's used accurately, make sure you follow data protection principles, the GDPR principles, and you've got to ultimately be accountable for how you use it. These are very broad brushstroke policy suggestions, and they link into the wider sort of research ethics policy. But these kind of policies and guidelines are appearing all over the place. So I guess that's my presentation, and hopefully you found it useful. Always happy to respond to comments and discussion. So hopefully that will follow. So I'll stop sharing and let Gratian have the microphone.
Hello, Andrew. If you don't mind me interjecting, I think you really stressed the role of information specialists and librarians as being proactive, as being the leaders in this. And I think we want to confirm that with those that are attending. This is really a key role for you professionally to bridge this gap.
Totally agree. Totally agree. It fits into other training that libraries naturally do to help people find information and navigate these kind of complex questions about finding the best information, weighing up critically resources and so forth. But maybe I'll let Gratian present his slides.
If you don't mind, there is one question from Nancy. It's hard for me to read my screen. If you'd like to answer it now or at the end, it's up to you. If not, if it's okay, Nancy, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thanks, Andrew, for that presentation. My concern or issue is around investments into the different Gen AI tools. We've noticed we have thousands of these Gen AI tools that are available, but most of the institutions, very few are making investments towards the premium or the paid versions of these tools. In terms of advocacy for budgetary allocations, what could be the best approach? I mean, this is with us, and most of the institutions, the learners, they are using the free versions, which are limited in so many ways when it comes to the capabilities. So from your experience, how are you handling this case when it comes to investments towards the paid up versions of the Gen AI and other research AI tools? Thank you.
That is a very good question. Yes, I agree that that is a problem. The way that many institutions in the UK are approaching really is, well, the argument for subscribing to something is basically equity. If we as an institution, so my institution recommends you use Google Gemini because we're a Google university. So there's two arguments for that. One is really Google have promised to protect the privacy of anything we upload. We may trust them, we may not. But the other thing is it's a level playing field. Every student has access to the same. And I think that's the killer. I think for you, Nancy, maybe that's the argument. It's got to be fair. Otherwise, some students will be paying quite a lot of money and getting a better service. Whereas you've got to really offer something that you recommend and has also been tested for privacy and confidentiality and those sort of things. That would be my thought.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So let me pick it up from there. And my name is Gratian Chimwaza, and I'm the director at iTalker. iTalker is Information Training and Outreach Center for Africa, and I'm based in South Africa. So I would like us to look at it from this angle, okay? Andrew has actually given you his views coming from the UK. And the way I see it is that the landscape is changing as far as research and learning is concerned, particularly from here in Africa and the global South, where the digital transformation is reshaping how knowledge is created and shared. We are getting an acceleration as far as discovery, not only what you can find, but also what you can produce in terms of dissemination. And our ecosystem, as far as research is concerned, is really taking a turn, and an important one as we go forward, due to the ability to leverage these tools, and more for looking at what other researchers are already using, particularly in the global north. But of course, it comes with responsibility. And that responsibility pertains to equity, to transparency on how we are using it, and how we are leveraging these tools that we are using. We must be accountable, no doubt about it. But like Andrew has indicated, we must be inclusive as far as how we work with others in terms of collaborations and how we participate in the global research conversations that are going on. The issue of ethical use of data and the issue of privacy, as he indicated, Andrew, are really issues that are challenging at the moment. But of course, we are concerned, especially the issue of bias, okay? How do we ensure that at the end of the day, we are working from the same angles and we are leveraging the tools that are there and we are working in a space where there's equity? Those that you've got, obviously, will be able to subscribe, like the last point that Andrew was indicating, and they will be able to access the tools that will enable them to do much more than those who are not able to subscribe. And sometimes it's not just the issue of how much is being charged for that subscription, but how to actually pay it. Maybe they're asking for a collection that can only be done via a credit card. And many of us in the Global South might not have access to that. But what we are trying to do is how do we then level the field and make it fair for everyone who is trying to use these resources. And when you look at the scholarly communication cycle, from the discovery moment, there is enhancements now where you can do an AI summary of any document that you've got access to, or the data itself, and you can do very effective searches in order for you to find the data that you are looking for. But also when you're doing your writing, you've got assistance, and that will help a lot, especially when English is not your first language or any of the languages that you're actually using. You can leverage the tools and the assists that you get via AI. For those who are responsible in terms of doing the manuscript reviews and the editors, they are taking advantage and being able to work faster as far as looking at the manuscripts are concerned. Of course, they can be able to use tools to detect things like plagiarism. They can be able to look at what already is not authentic using the tools that are available. It makes them work faster. Okay, and of course, when it comes to the publishing itself and making sure that what has been published is accessible, indexing tools, tagging, analytics, and all those kind of tools are now available and they can be taken advantage of. It doesn't matter where you are based, whether you are working from a region in South America, you are working from a region in Southern Africa, you are in Malawi, and you are publishing that one journal in your university department, you will be able to leverage and take advantage of these tools. So that really enhances what you can do, and doesn't matter where you are working from. And of course, in the environment of learning and training, there is a lot that we can use in terms of adapting to the systems that we have, tutorials, things like that. We can make sure that we can automate all those kind of systems and be able to work smarter and be able to also cut on costs and save on time. Many tools now make sure that we can reach areas where we have not been able to reach, whether you are taking out a survey and they are trying to reach the different corners of the world, so to speak, or the regions, or beyond just the urban areas where there is connectivity, you'll be able to get that so that you get a better representation in your research and in your responses that you are getting in. Issues of translation, where you are running different kind of surveys. I'm involved currently where we are running survey across the Global South, and that's being done right now in English, Spanish, and French. And in these focus groups that we are going to be implementing, you are able to translate and transcribe what is actually going on using these tools that will enable you to cut across and compare and contrast the different results that you can do quite easily because you are leveraging AI. We will ensure, obviously, that when we do publish, the visibility is out there, and we can target specifically the different audiences. And not only that, but also adapt and make sure we modify the result and speak to the different audiences in a manner that they can understand, and that you can easily be able to do that. And of course, make sure that what you produce can be easily discovered. These are ways to ensure that you can be able to produce at a faster rate, at an affordable rate, and making sure that you can get out there what you need to get out. But look at it this way, for the editors, for the reviewers, for example, when your manuscript lands on their desk, they can do a triage quite easily to be able to see whether you are abiding by the guidelines that they've published in their authorship guide. They can easily go and check that the fonts and everything that you've got, the number of words in your abstract and the language that you are using in there pertains and addresses the issues that they've got in terms of their guidance. The metadata can be picked up quite easily, and they can do all the tagging that they need to do. So it is a faster way of doing your reviews, and hopefully at the end of the day, the benefits are that that manuscript, the decision will be made quite earlier than the usual, and you will know whether you have been accepted or not, or if there are any areas that you need to address that the editor wants you to look at. But of course, indeed, on the downside is that these algorithms are made by human beings, and they tend to have inherent biases with them. And of course, linguistics limitations can also be an issue, especially if we are producing in the main language in English. It is research that you are doing. I did look up and say, what kind of tools can we use for the different aspects and cases that we have? And I can see that not every tool is for everything, okay? You should be able to find the best tool depending on the tasks that you are faced with. For those that are in academics and you are coming up with your idea and you're working with your manuscript, maybe it's a proposal for your dissertation and things like that, tools that are available through ChatGPT can be leveraged. You can look at Grammarly if you want to make sure that you are polishing your drafts and things like that, particularly when it is in English, okay? But some of those tools would not work best for the environments and tasks that you want to do. So you need to be able to find the right tool for the right task that you want to be able to use. I think Andrew did touch on that. We are all going to have to learn how to do the prompting. It's going to be key. It doesn't matter what tool you're actually trying to use. You need to do the prompting in a manner that the tool can actually understand, and you'll be able to formulate it and properly be able to execute it. And that's quite important in terms of prompting, okay? But of course, we all know that the downside of things is that how much can you upload in terms of your personal information? So privacy is going to be important. And you want to make sure that at the end of the day, you keep that to yourself, okay? If you look at issues of mundane issues like tasks that you want to do in terms of report generation, issues with meeting transcriptions, email management and drafting, all those things, you can now be able to automate that with the right prompting and giving the right instruction to the tool, and you will be able to get that done as quickly as possible. Those who are doing marking, and you've got so many evaluations to do, and once you do the right prompting and you feed it with the right information, it really is going to be fast, and you'll be able to pick up and review what the outcomes that are coming out of your tool that you are using. If you are looking at screening in terms of your data, it's important that you be able to put the right prompts again and be able to automate and check things like manuscripts and things like that, your data and all those kind of things as you upload it, okay? You can also assess quite quickly things like, if you are looking at a formatted kind of a title and abstract, and then the body and all those kind of these things that you have got in terms of a format, you can easily compare across the different kind of journals and see what the author guidelines are and be able to find that it fits with your scope and things like that. It makes it quite easy. But of course, the dangers are out there. Lurking in there, things like fake citations, the hallucinations that are coming from these tools. You need to be able to check in that the human eye is quite important. You need to be able to go and verify, especially things like citations. You want to make sure that you have got those and you are checking them as a human being. The algorithmic biases, I did touch on that, and those come in inherent with many tools. I did put in a few examples in there where there is discrimination, especially in tools that are used for hiring and things like that, because the data that they trained on might have been from the global north, and it doesn't have got the nuances and the variances that you have if you are trying to use it here in South Africa, or you're trying to use it in Zambia or Zimbabwe or elsewhere where it has not been trained, and inherently you are going to have challenges. So those are the things that you need to be aware of. The fake citations and hallucinations, I did check on that already, and I pointed that out. You should never trust anything generated by AI without actually verifying and checking it. If you are going to go to the references, you must make sure that you go and actually pinpoint on the references one by one, and you check them where they're actually coming from. It is easy to hallucinate and come up with those fake citations. That will be quite problematic with your work. So many of these challenges are something that we can counter to a certain extent, but obviously it's not that we will be able to address all the problems that are there. As long as we are aware that these challenges are there when we are using these resources and making sure that we are taking advantage of them, but knowing what the pitfalls are. I'm looking at the time, and I just want to make sure that I go out showing you the kind of examples that are out there, AI-driven indexes. AGORA, for example, Africa Archive, they are taking advantage of that. That makes it easy for them to actually go and do the data mining and be able to find the articles down there and quite index them quite easily. Things like collaborations, those we are doing, and it's much easier doing them now, working together in collaborative spaces and be able to check each other's work as well. Okay. An example there, the Northwest University has some guidelines. Of course, not many universities have got that up there in their libraries, in their schools, but you want to be able to learn from what the others are doing, okay? Policies may not be there yet, it's early days, that can guide the students and the faculty, like the example that we got from Dr. Andrew at Sheffield University. But some directions, for example, at Northwest University, they do acknowledge that you can leverage and use AI tools as long as you disclose them. You can have a user log that you show the prompts and the outputs, how you have been able to use them. And of course, you must be able to make sure that you stay within the academic integrity, the usual conducts that you have. We claim the work that you have done, and if it is not your work, you reference it properly, okay? It is meant for you to augment the work that you are doing, but not to be the one that is generating the work and you claiming that it is your work. They are quite clear in the permitted uses, things like checking grammars, corrections in things like language refinement and referencing and formatting and things like that. You can take advantage of these tools. But of course, you must be aware of the boundaries on how you can use things like that. The recent publication of Access to Science and Innovation in the Developing World by WIPO touched many data points, millions to be exact, and they looked at clinical trials, they looked at patents across the world, and they looked at many institutions, how they are using and leveraging resources like Hinari. And the outcome of that was quite interesting because they've got these institutions, they've got access to a resource like Hinari. There's been an uptick in terms of increase of use and access to research and what they are producing at their own institutions, which is quite encouraging. So these tools can be used for the betterment of the work that is going on. Okay, I'd like to stop here, and also I'm aware of the time. Thank you very much. Lenny, back to you.
Audio, video. Okay, I've been trying my best to put in a little file I created the questions. I know Andrew has answered some of them very well. Thank you very much. But maybe you'd want to add comments. So I'm going to go to this little file I have now, and we're going to start at the top with what came in chat. And of course, you can still add more questions in chat. How can AI be used to promote rather than replace critical thinking in higher education spaces?
It's a very good question. Very, very good question. Of course, like I think we don't want to parcel out the critical thinking to AI tools because it's a skill that is quite important. And we want to make sure, particularly for the students, that they have got the skill and they're actually using and learning it. It's like everything else. The way we ride a bicycle, we have to learn, all of us. We fall down, we try again, and we build on that skill, and then we get it right. You don't want to parcel that out to a tool like AI. And I think that is why it is important, for example, in the guidelines at the universities and research organizations, to make sure that you are clear on what tools can be used and how they can augment what you are doing and your thoughts beyond just throwing in there the data and you've got results and you are throwing it in a black box. That's what they call it, the problems of the black box. You throw in 1 minute, you get some result. You come in tomorrow and you throw in the same data, you get a different result. You can't duplicate what you have already done, but you are parceling out the critical thinking. And that's the kind of conversation we need to continue to have with our students so that they realize how important it is. Andrew, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would say one of the key ways that we promote critical thinking is kind of close reading of texts. We give students something to read that they've got to go through carefully and really think about. These can be quite complicated texts. Increasingly, it's so easy to get a summary. So, for example, if you install some versions of Adobe Acrobat, it'll offer you a summary without you even asking. AI functionality is kind of spread out from ChatGPT. It's popping up everywhere. But when you're just relying on summaries all the time, you're not really doing that close reading. So I would say one of the key things about being critical is like you read a text and you really think about it. And I did suggest in the comments one way that, again, you can promote a critical view of generative AI outputs is to put students in a position of like learning about a topic and then looking at the answers that generative AI gives. So if you've taught them about, I don't know, a particular agricultural practice in your region in some depth, AI will probably do an okay job, but they will see probably lots of problems and lots of ignorance of the local context. And that will prime them to be always thinking, oh, actually, I just can't take the answers I'm getting here at face value. I must always be asking, is this a little bit biased towards maybe American context? What is the source? Where's the source come from? Is this a good source? So we need to, but these are things that I guess, as Lenny emphasized earlier, it's like these are things that libraries, information professors are all about. So it's like this is where libraries can play a key role. It's just reinforcing messages we've been saying, being distrustful of Google for years. Now we've got to even more strongly kind of put over that critical argument, I think.
Yeah. One thing I thought of is that as information professionals, we've had to deal with the whole issue of predatory publishers. And that's another thing that the concept of critical thinking really applies to. So use the skills you have in trying to make some sense out of this whole new frontier. That's what I would suggest. Okay, we have another question here. Is there any AI tool that protects data documents confidentiality? Because in my institution, students and staff want to use Gen AI for some summarization and proofreading. And Andrew, you did answer this. You said it was tricky, but you may want to elaborate on that a little more.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that any of the free versions are going to be particularly safe. And I think you have to look closely at the privacy agreements. And there have been a few examples of really good sort of checklists of things to go through when you're thinking about whether you should adopt a particular tool or not. Well worth, I can circulate one after the meeting. Thinking about, like, systematically thinking, well, how are we going to weigh up whether this is something we should recommend or something we can only recommend with careful qualification, or please don't use it. So yeah, but I'm not sure there are many generative AI things out there that are totally safe to use. From I wouldn't upload, say, interview data that was confidential for sure to analyze. I would be quite reluctant to do that, even as I say, our institution has got an agreement with Google, but I don't think I would even do that in that sort of protected context. So, but on the other hand, if it was, I don't know, just a quick summarization of some text, well, it's not really going to do that much harm. So, case by case, you have to think through what the considerations are in that particular circumstance, I guess.
I think that's kind of a good segue, and you've already discussed this a bit. How can AI be used to promote rather than replace critical thinking in higher education spaces?
Indeed, indeed. And I think Pascal, I think I see also has got a point on that. How can it be used ethically? And how can we be responsible on the use of these tools? And I think, to me, that's the million-dollar question. But let me hasten to encourage you to embrace what AI can actually do in terms of how it can augment the work that you are already doing. I will take you back to the time when many of these Word tools like Microsoft Word came about, and we now all of a sudden had the ability to write our text and also get the grammar corrected using the tool in Microsoft Word. It was voila. We were all excited. We were like, well, this is a very important tool, and it actually assists us in what we are doing. And of course, at the same time, for librarians, for example, when the citation reference management tools like Mendeley, like Zotero came about, and we didn't have to do that manually anymore, we were, of course, excited about it, but we were kind of cautiously thinking about, well, these skills now are lost on how people used to be able to do your referencing manually. During the time of Lenny, you were doing this manually. You would actually, when you did your thesis, during your, exactly, you see, you had to do the indexing and the referencing manually. But now it's all parceling all that to a tool like Zotero and EndNote, we are able to use that. But it is the same now where we are going. There will be a lot that we can be able to take advantage of in terms of the tools. But the critical thinking and all those aspects that are important skills, we need to retain them and be able to use them in a more beneficial way going forward. The power, if you like, of the mind that we were using for things like repetitive, mundane things, we can then use that for other things as we learn new skills going forward. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Thank you for the reference to the management tools, because when they came out, I thought they were magic, is the word I used. So, okay, let's see if we have a couple more questions we can do. We usually have a few minutes at the end, so we can continue if it's all right. Here's a good one. I have a question that has been bothering me for a while. I keep wondering, in the long run and with the benefits of hindsight, can we all honestly describe AI as a blessing or a curse? And Andrew, you did answer this, but maybe you want to elaborate a little more on it. You said in the long run, you think it take for granted, et cetera, et cetera.
I think Gracian's just made a really good point about, word spell checking. What a great boon that is. Looking after references. I was always useless at manual referencing, so it's wonderful that that can be all checked. I think there's a lot of productivity gains from generative AI. It can do lots of, low-level things. You might be processing data. I remember one really good example is like they were getting data that was in capital letters, and they just used it to translate it to, lower mix of capitals and lowercase. So it can do very simple things for you that could be quite productive. But I think the dangerous dimension that I guess a lot of us in sort of global north sort of worried about is, it's really trying to replace doing something right, things like thinking and writing. These are tasks that we really value in our society. They're really important parts of human creativity, and we mustn't let AI do those core things. It's okay to let it process some data, but we've got to retain the most important things must be under human control, surely. That would be. So, I mean, that isn't really answering the question, but I suppose hopefully in the long run, the beneficial uses of AI will come to the fore and the problems will be ironed out. But when the drivers are basically big American corporations trying to make money, I'm not sure, but I'm positive that that will be the outcome. That's the,
Yeah.
And I think there's no evidence that it will reduce inequality globally. I don't think it will. Sorry.
I'm thinking back to when, with the publishers and the questionable journals, tools started emerging that helped individuals figure out which journal to submit, their article to, like think, check, and submit. So maybe some tools will evolve for how to use these new tools, and it'll give people some mechanism for figuring out if they're working in the right direction or getting extraneous information. But that will take time because this is all so new. I think we have one we can end with, if we're all right. The meeting schedule is about to end. Action items for this meeting. Produce a report that helps people launch into discussion about how AI should be used, and develop institutional policies, procedures, and guidelines. Okay, and that's a suggestion. Andrew, did you make that suggestion? I'm not clear on my notes here, but maybe that's a good one to talk about at the end here.
I think it's I think it's an AI has made the summary of this Zoom call and it's given me an action. I've got to go away and write this report. I think that's what that message actually is. So it shows that even people on this call some of them are AI. And I know Gratian uses quite effectively these summary for meetings. And
Yeah.
who likes to write meeting minutes? So come
That's
on.
true.
Now we have sold out all that effort, that mundane task to AI, and it summarizes very well the work that we have done and the discussions, the takeaway that you have, the action points. You can easily do that now with AI. There is one question, Lenny, from, she has got a hand up. Nidal, yes, sir? Maybe we can end on that note.
Hello, thank you for this fruitful presentations and talks. Actually, my question, I already wrote it in the chat, but I'm an expert in design thinking and research, and also integrated them to develop a gamified training program. We witnessed wonderful results within our students too, but I want to know if there is an AI that can help us to integrate it into the design thinking and the research process, because we see what we have that comment from all our students that they understand the research process properly, and when they use design thinking to understand and to apply their research into their research. So how we can integrate also and benefit from AI in that.
Andrew, you want to answer that?
The best I can think of to say is really, if you've produced a gamified way to explain the research process, maybe you should be developing a gamified way to explain AI so that people can be more critical about it, because it feels like that's what's needed, is like engaging tools that promote AI literacy.
Okay. Andrew, if you write that report, it's very easy for us to send it to all the registrants. Okay, as you know, that sometimes we had a very nice turnout, but we had many more registrants, so they're going to want to hear the video and they're going to want to see the presentations. So maybe we can also send that out. I don't think it's a problem for me and Michael to do that. So we'll be looking forward to that. My feeling is about AI is we've maybe hit the top of the iceberg today, but that's a lot better than falling off the iceberg. So we've made some progress here. For the participants, we appreciate your time. We appreciate the thoughtful questions in chat, which gave our presenters a chance to elaborate a little more. And as I said, we will make sure the presentation video, the link to the video is sent to everyone, and also the 2 PowerPoints. So again, I'd like to thank the 2 of them, because for me, this was a real, I'm not moderator, I'm a learning too. So it was really very useful for me on that level. Are there any more comments or questions? I see some nice hands coming up for the 2 of you. We appreciate your time for sure. Would you like to add anything, Andrew or Gratian?
Thank you very much, Lenny, for the opportunity. We're always excited to be able to reach out to the many colleagues that are across the globe. Thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Dr. Andrew Cox, for really being with us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we see more hands up, and thank you all for the presentations. We hope to have this again. So we'll have to think of more AI. This is our second relating to AI, and I think it's a recurring theme. So if we can come up with a little different tangent, or what Andrew has learned in his research, would be very good to continue on this. Okay, any more comments? Okay, No. Thanks. Okay, we appreciate everyone's time and we will get the material to you. Bye for now.